Hi, this is Brian Kim. I want to share with you case number 249 in the Best Way to Do Cataract Surgery series. And the title of this series is not to suggest this is the best way, but to get you to think critically of your technique, looking to find ways to refine and hone your technique so that you can provide the very best for your patient. So this patient has a double pseudoexfoliation ring. And as you know, pseudoexfoliation can be a cause for zonulopathy. And so we're going to find throughout this case, is there going to be zonulopathy? And we're going to employ techniques to minimize zonular stress. You can see here the double pseudoexfoliation ring. And so the phenomenon of the pseudoexfoliation ring is the peeling of the lens capsule, which again is associated with zonulopathy. And you can see the stria on the peripheral aspects of the pseudoexfoliation ring. And those stria lines may suggest zonulopathy. So I use a cotton tip to steady the eye. And this is the corneal mark, which will help me to center and size the rhexis. And these are my paracentesis incisions, first on the right side and then the left side, making sure I'm parallel to iris plane, which creates a nice corneal shelf, which will allow me to achieve a self-sealing incision. This is intracameral epinephrine, and then some dispersive viscoelastic to coat the corneal endothelium and flatten the anterior capsule. And this is the triplanar corneal incision. I make a vertical groove, place the blade into the deep part of the groove, tunnel, and then I enter. I use the cannula for the Orlock technique to control the eye. And these are my sharp tip microrhexis forceps. I puncture the center, pull down, grab the right side of the tear going around circumferentially. And oftentimes when you see those lines in the capsule, the pseudoexfoliation lines, sometimes as you're trying to make the rhexis, you'll get these interesting, almost like there's different lamina within the anterior capsule when you're trying to peel it. Sometimes it almost catches as you're trying to do the rhexis. I found that rather interesting over the years dealing with these cases. Finishing off the rhexis, burp some viscoelastic out. And this is a coating of the cornea with a dispersive viscoelastic so that my technician doesn't have to keep wetting the eye. And this is the capsule fornix hydrodissection technique. I place a cannula under the rhexis edge contra-incisionally, get a nice wave, decompress the bag, loosening the anterior capsule first on the left side and then the right side. And as I do this, the lens begins to spin. So far, no terrible signs of zonulopathy, no troubles during the rhexis. I didn't see any stria. When I placed the cannula under the rhexis edge for hydrodissection, I didn't see the wobbling of the lens. So far, so good. Lift the incision with a chopper, go in with irrigation off to minimize Descemet's trauma, sliding the chopper under the rhexis edge contra-incisionally, the phaco tip vertically sub-incisionally, fracturing the lens completely in half. That's the double chop, sliding the chopper under the right heminucleus, hooking the peripheral lens, pulling it centered toward the phaco tip, and crushing the right heminucleus in half, and that is the cross chop. Using the chopper to gently lift that first quadrant up out of the bag, and doing the same thing, trying to hook that second quadrant up out of the bag. It didn't quite come out, so I perform another cross chop maneuver around that second quadrant. You see I'm trying to grab that piece that's in the capsular fornix that's stuck with vacuum. It didn't work. Don't perseverate. Don't go after it and try to buzz it. That's what people do. And all I did, I just used a chopper and hooked it up out of the bag. So when you have a stuck piece, never go in there and buzz it with ultrasonic energy and then vacuum. You can grab the bag. Why do that? Just use a chopper and to pull it up out of the bag. It's so much better. Turn the second heminucleus in front of me, hooking the peripheral lens and performing another cross-chop maneuver, and then grabbing each quadrant with some vacuum, crushing the lens between the instruments, and then emulsifying the lens pieces. So again, no serious signs of zonulopathy throughout this case. Very efficient lens disassembly technique, leveraging mechanical fracturing and hooking the lens peripherally with the chopper. Removing the epinucleus. So I take the chopper out, push BSS in, take the phaco tip out, and I go in with the I&E handpiece. I start subincisionally peeling the cortex from anterior to posterior. And in this case, I do not see any stria lines in the posterior capsule as I'm peeling the cortex. You saw my previous video. Again, this is in stark contrast to that video where there was significant signs of zonulopathy, pulling of the capsule, the posterior stria, as I'm doing the IA, and even doing the rexus, you saw the folds. Again, none of those signs in this case. I thought it was going to be an interesting contrast in the comparison in this eye, which has a double pseudoexfoliation ring. So very quickly removing and peeling off all that cortex from front to back, pulsing BSS into the subincisional capsule fornix and on the right side as well. You saw some few wisps there. Turn off the fluid and then pushing cohesive viscoelastic filled bag and then polishing under the rexus edge with the sweeper, removing the lens epithelial cells. And again, in this case, the bag was rather clean, and that's because, again, the lens was a fairly easy spinning lens. Whenever you can spin the lens, I think the biggest advantage, of course, you just loosen up all that cortical material, which is really the biggest advantage. But again, if you can't turn the lens because of bad zonules, you need to find other ways to disassemble the lens and not stress the zonules. So I go in with irrigation off, activating irrigation, making sure the haptics are off the optic. Tilting and lifting the lens up, rotating it 90 degrees clockwise, removing all the viscoelastic from within the bag. Polishing under the rexus edge, removing all the viscoelastic from the anterior chamber, and then I'll hydromat incision. So again, this is a case of pseudoexfoliation, not just a pseudoexfoliation, but it's double pseudoexfoliation ring, and I wanted to see if there's going to be any signs of zonulopathy. You saw the previous video from last week where I showed signs of zonulopathy throughout the case. I did not have any of those signs in this case, but remember, I was prepared with every case, not just this one, but every single case of doing a zonule-friendly technique. You want to make sure that when you do the rexus, that you're mindful of any traction on the rexus. You want to see if there's any undue stress on the zonules. When you place the cannula for hydrodissection, does it cause the bag decompressing because the bag keeps bowing back as you're trying to push down on the lens? And then, of course, after the lens is removed and you try to clean up the cortex, you can see puckering of the posterior capsule. As you polish the posterior capsule, you can see a spider sign. Again, all of these things are signs of zonulopathy. Thankfully, in this case, I didn't see any, but because I performed the surgery the same exact way with these fundamental techniques, I was well prepared. And so again, this is another reason why I feel like by being prepared, preparation is really the harbinger to success. And so this is why I think this is the best way to do cataract surgery. So I hope this is helpful to you, and I thank you for your attention.